Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you live from our studios here in the nation's capital city, Abuja. I am Zainab Bala.
And I am Ayuba Ilya. We are super excited to have you join us this morning on the show. And here, of course, we'll keep you updated and give you all the gists, about recent happenings in and around our country. This is a show that we do every morning on weekdays, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., just to give you a heads up. And of course, it brings a whole lot of package analysis and perspectives, as well as reviews on newspapers in the country. Now, today is going to be, quite a lot.
An interesting day.
Interesting. We have a lot to look at, looking at the issue of, gas in Nigeria, particularly climate change, and the impact of gas, and then the soaring prices of gas. And then we're also going to be talking about, POS business in Nigeria, how it's gaining acceptability, and also take a look at the tragic incident that happened yesterday in Lagos, the explosion where we saw a number of persons, died and all of that. Very tragic one, I would say. Is one too many as far as I'm concerned, because we've been having, just yesterday we were having that conversation with a director from the fire service, talking to us about all the efforts that the agency is making in terms of response to emergencies and all of that. And yes, and then boom, we had another one, in Lagos.
A lot of people say that when it's the Harmattan season, there's a lot of, explosions, fire incidents as well going on. I don't know if that is a myth or because a lot of people say when it's dry season or it's Harmattan season, there's a lot of fire incidents that happen.
It's actually, a fact based on what the interaction we had yesterday. He said that the Federal Fire Service actually records higher incidences of fire outbreaks during the dry season, as a result of the weather being dry and all of that. And it's true, because if you look at it, the tendency of fire being lit at the slightest chance, is more. You would say the possibility, the tendency is quite very high,
right,
in a dry season and all of that. So we'll be looking at that on the show, and also it's Antibiotics Week.
Yes, it's Antibiotics Week, and I am super excited, to take a look at what this day, this week is all about, what the Antibiotics Week tends to highlight and all of that. Yeah,
so we'll be having a pharmacist, an expert, to talk about that on the show. For now, let's take a look at world history on the 17th of November. Take a look.
Well, quite a number of events that happened on the 17th of November. Taking a look at in 1993, General Sani Abacha leads a military coup in Nigeria that overthrows the government of Ernest Shonika. And in 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger sworn in as Californian governor. And in 1558, Queen Elizabeth ascends to the throne of England. And in 1918, influenza deaths reported in the United States exceeds World War I casualties. Wow.
Very interesting. I mean, whatever you do, you cannot erase the history that we had of military coups, in Nigeria, and, how much it has also, I would say, impacted on our democratic process, even as we have it till date.
Right.
So that was a significant moment not to be forgotten in our history, the overthrow of Ernest Shonika. And talking about someone like Arnold in 2003,
we know him
someone after having a very successful career in
Hollywood,
in movie, decided to venture into politics, and he did so well. I mean, many of us remember him as Commando.
Commando, yes. Many actually say it was because of that Commando character that people really liked him as a governor.
Yes, I think that was his, for me, that was his best act. That was his best movie.
People still remember it.
Because that very movie went, if you ask me, I would say it went viral. All over the world, children, adults, everyone was watching action movies, and it was Commando all the way. In fact, if people want to describe you, as someone who is heroic in nature, or maybe, someone who is doing some legendary stuff, people will just call you Commando. So right from kids, we had, that influence, and that carried over, and that's why, it is said that perception is everything.
Yes, yes.
After having that career, he moved on into politics, and he eventually emerged. I mean, who would ever think that as an actor you could actually go into, politics? And even in Nigeria,
yes,
we have some of them doing that.
What's his name? Dominic.
Desmond Elliott.
Desmond
Elliott. You have some of them who were appointees at some point, like RMD Richard, who is doing very well, by the way.
Excellently.
In fact, he has gone beyond just acting. He's now into advertising.
Yes.
And, modeling and all of that.
It's really good that, some of these stars find a way to diversify. If acting doesn't work, let's find another thing to do as well.
Yes, very true. So, I hope that the characters that they portray in the movies, they will actually portray those good characters, by the way, not the bad ones. The good characters they portray in the movie, I hope they will do the same when they find themselves in public office. Also, today is quite memorable. I mean, if you look at the history of the United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth herself ascended, to that throne on a day like this back in 1558. So, quite memorable days, really.
Okay, now it's time for us to take a look at the stories on our dailies this morning. And we have a guest in the studio to review some of the papers. But before that, let's take a quick break. Stay.
But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, now let's begin the review on our dailies, and we'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And on page 20, the first story at the top, you'd see airport concession disquiet over petition against 3 bidders. The next story there, police recover 2 corpses of kidnapped butchers in Ondo. The lead story on Daily Trust, tree felling on the rise as cooking gas price skyrockets. You would also find the writer saying households, restaurants resort to firewood, charcoal. It's a threat to human existence. That's according to experts. The pictorial there shows you firewood along Munguno Baga Road in Borno State. Below that, tears as 10-year-old, 4 others die in Lagos explosion. And that's on page 40 of Daily Trust this morning. At the very bottom, hashtag #EndSARS. US ask federal government, Lagos to ensure justice, compensation for victims. That's on page 6. For details of that story, you can pick a copy. Uni Loring expels students who beat lecturer to coma. And then you would also find Kano local government area chair leads mob to destroy reps project.
Interesting.
Sad. What on earth is going on? How do you explain that? A local government chair leading a mob to destroy a project by House of Reps member, whatever that reason could be, it must be very, very, I don't want to use the word, but
it's disheartening.
It's absurd.
Well,
I mean, these are people who are supposed to be partners. For crying out loud. And this happens.
This looks
maybe because
like
of political
crisis.
affiliation.
Exactly.
Or maybe
It
some
looks
kind
like
of
it.
rivalry or whatever. But to the detriment of who? Who suffers this now?
People.
It's really sad. And the one about expelling a student who beat a lecturer to coma, unfortunate. I heard about that story, about how that the student missed, I think it was an assessment that he missed, and then he went to the lecturer's office to request that he wants to, take part in the assessment, and then the lecturer decides not to give that opportunity to him, and then he decided to beat the lecturer to coma.
It's really a sad, really very, very sad story.
But let's take a look at more stories.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. On page 18, you'd find federal government plans $100 billion Nigerian-Brazil initiative on economy, food security. And on page 17, crypto firms practice high-level illegality, alleges Emefiele. Still on page 17, federal government blames theft, insecurity, others as oil production plunges. And on page 8, you'd find Gbaja Biamila summons ministers ASU as lecturers threaten fresh strike. And the Punch newspaper is leading with Lagos hashtag #EndSARS report. Federal government lists loopholes, UN, US, others demand sanctions. One of the writers is saying Sanwo-Olu advocates speed on white paper. Amnesty calls for prosecution of attackers. Another writer states there are inaccuracies in report. We await white paper, says federal government official. You'd also see a very sad picture there of the gas explosion that happened in Lagos, where 5 were found dead, 15 vehicles destroyed as phone call triggers Lagos gas explosion. There's been this conversation about people not using their mobile phones when they are close to, the gas, but a lot of us, particularly women, are guilty of that in our homes. Yes. We should be really cautious of that going forward. Now on page 12, you'd find 300 monarchs backing Tinubu for 2023 presidency campaign coordinator. That's interesting. You find the details of that on page 12 of the Punch newspaper. You'd also find on page 4, suspected herdsmen kidnap, kill Ondo butchers, tricked to buy cows. And on page 29, you'd see we appealed case of Nigerian girl wrongly jailed in Cote d'Ivoire. That's according to the federal government. So these are some of the stories on the Punch this morning. All right.
Now let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The first story there says why ASU can't go on strike by Nkike. The writer says NASU rejects sharing formula. You'd find that on page 6. So that's the reason that we are now given for why the demands have not been met fully. So who is responsible for resolving those issues? We would find also IMF, E-Naira will cut costs of diaspora remittances. That's on page 5. Zenith Bank CEO seeks synergy in lift economy. Uni Loring expels students for battering female lecturer. That's on page 3. You would also find the governors insist on litigation to end Paris Club refund row. The lead story on The Nation, UN, US SANS to government, act on Lagos #EndSARS report. The PDP activists back punishment for indicted officers, CDS Defense Army. Well, the pictorial shows you that of the gas explosion where 5 people died and 12 people were injured, in that incident. That's that for The Nation newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on The Guardian newspaper this morning before we begin the review. Court rules on suit seeking Soludo's disqualification November 30th. That's a new one. You find the details of that story on page 3 of The Guardian newspaper. Still on page 3, you'd find Justice Odili. Wike demands immediate prosecution of invaders. You'd also find #EndSARS panel report. UN, US, Falana demand accountability. One of the riders states defense chief fault procedure of release, insists armed forces are professionals. Governor yet to read submitted report, says spokesman. Another rider is saying PDP demands prosecution of killers, collaborators. Apologize to Lagosians over Lekki toll gate shootings. Body George urges Sanwo-Olu. You'd also see ex-CDHR boss raises concern over Lagos committee to review panel reports. These are some of the lead stories on The Guardian newspaper this morning.
All right, so let's get perspectives on these stories this morning. We have in the studio Ali M. Ali, Editor-in-Chief, People's Daily, in the studio to review the stories with us. Good morning, and it's good to have you, Janice, this morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's
Welcome
good
to
be
the
here.
program.
Good morning.
All right, now let's begin with some of the stories that we're getting that one will say heartbreaking stories, really. For me, the one that got my attention on Daily Trust newspaper this morning about the local government chair, leading a mob to, destroy a project by a rep member. How does that come to you?
Well, you said it all. It's quite heartbreaking. It's unfortunate and underscores the rivalry. Like they say, all politics is local. I don't know the details, but from the headlines, clearly it's very sad. And when 2 elephants fight, a common, which has become a cliche, is that the grass suffers. But you see, it's reflective of the kind of poor judgment on the part of leaders. And then also reflected of the intensity of passion, not reason, that drives some of our leaders at the local or even at the state level. Now you have a local government chairman, duly elected, not appointed, leading a mob. But some will say that it has been a trend in the past that been, especially in Kano. There was an instance, a leading government official in previous dispensation actually leading a mob to destroy alcohol at the time. He led a very visible, still very visible government official, led a mob illegally to destroy, because the state at that time still has banned, has implemented Sharia, and part of the provision of the Sharia Act is the prohibition of alcohol consumption. The official then, who is still very visible now, led a ban and destroyed. So years later, we have a local government. Who knows what is going to happen next? But it is not out of place of late. And because over the years, this thing has prevailed without culprit being punished in the name of, differences in political persuasions, is going to fester, is going to continue, because of political division in such localities. And like I said, it's reflective of the poor judgment on the part of leaders. When you become a leader, then you rise above the divisions. You don't look at the divisions. You lead people irrespective of their political persuasion. How much more when you're leading the community and then there is a difference and then provision, infrastructural development or whatever is being provided, then you lead them upstairs. You know, in saner climes, first, immediately the government should suspend the local government chairman. Then set up an inquiry, a panel of inquiry, and then appropriately mete out punishment. Or else the state government will be seen working hand in glove with the local government chairman.
You know, I would like to use the word that you use, insane climes.
Yeah.
Are we now gradually accepting our society as an insane society by virtue of these kind of happenings? Aren't we not going to do the right thing? I mean, what does it take really to do the right thing?
Let me quote the words of Ali Musri in the days, in this long three-part documentary, Africa, a Triple Heritage. Now, when he was talking about Nigeria, he said, under military rule, Nigeria inches towards dictatorship. And under civilian democracy, we inch towards anarchy. Now, coming back to the question, are we insane? Yeah. You will say most people controlling the levels of power are 50% outright insane. Some of the decisions they take, you begin to wonder. We've seen instances where, I'm trying to recall this French leader who said, I am the state is me. Most of our political leaders see themselves as the personification of the state. They don't make that distinction. And what they do or what they say remains law, and which is clearly in conflict with constitutional or legal provisions. You are only privileged to lead. So what happens now? We see instances where governors support the idea of impeaching a recalcitrant either speaker or a member of the state assembly when you don't even have a quorum. We've seen instances where speakers are impeached in the confines of a hotel room. You know, so you see,
for one disagreement or the other, with
precisely.
Maybe the
so where is the sanity there? We've lost most people controlling the level. Well, they say power intoxicates. That is the ultimate aphrodisiacs. And in Africa, and I'm talking about Africa, where people, let me just slightly digress. In Africa, the concept of opposition does not exist according to Obasanjo. He said opposition means enmity. If you are my opponent, you are my enemy, and I must destroy you. That is like you, in the course of this program, you were saying perception. To some people, perception is their reality. And perception is informed by all kinds of biases. Religious, cultural, they inform your perception. So now, we're saying, quoting the words of Ali Musri, we're inching towards anarchy. And clearly you can see we're almost in that state of anarchy. Because people, especially our politicians, are intolerant of dissenting views. In the same state, the leader, the number one citizen, asks the Speaker of the House of Reps to strip a recalcitrant member of the House of Representatives of his committee responsibilities. He is there in the public domain. He said, look, with this fella is recalcitrant, strip him of his committee chairmanship. And the speaker fired back. He said, look, appointing a committee chairman is the exclusive prerogative of the House, not belonging to state governors. So we've had that instances. In the same Kanu, I remember in the days of Rabi Musa Konkoso, he had a running battle with the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, Galina Abba, who had different political view from the same party, but because different leanings. And then that running battle cost them re-election in 2003. And now in 2021, we had a local government chairman just trying to sketch this picture of insanity, of people who are not tolerant of dissension. And this is democracy. one of which is the right to dissent. Let the majority carry the day, but the minority have their say. But we have, from the body language and the expression of those controlling the levels of power at various levels, local government, state, and even the federal, you see people not dissenting agreeably.
But doesn't this have a repercussion on the people?
It's already having repercussions, because if you destroy federal, constituency projects, it's impacting. For example, if you are, maybe, I don't know, I've not read the details, but clearly it's something that is heart-wrenching. But imagine if you are destroying borehole in a state with a population of over 20 million or thereabout, and then borehole people, they're in dire need of potable water, and then you destroy that. It's affecting the people. So it's clearly, as much as you can disagree, but let it not descend to this reprehensible level.
All right, now we have also another story on Daily Trust here about Uni Ilorin expelling student who beat lecturer to coma. I don't know if you've heard about that story.
And I think that it's quite disheartening. But you see,
whether that expelling is enough,
I don't think it's enough, because you have to set a deterrence. We know, and then a university like University of Ilorin, if you know the history of University of Ilorin, is one of the most peaceful institutions, especially in north-central Nigeria. Some people want to argue that actually even the state belongs to the southwest. You understand? It's a predominantly Yoruba-speaking state, but a lot of other Fulani elements are there. But the point I'm trying to make is that is a slap on the wrist. Expulsion is not enough. He should be prosecuted. To set an example, is the universities where cultism has reigned supreme, where cultist university students, who presumably with the right training, they assume the mantra of leadership tomorrow. What they say, youth are the leaders of tomorrow, is it? That's the expression. Mm-hmm. Now, they're being trained. You're not just being trained for intellectual or academic prowess. You're also, your morality, is being shaped. And then here you are, because of some one or two disagreement, or then you take the law literally into your hands, and then beat your scholars to pulp, to coma. So to me, that was a very mild. It's a slap on the wrist after the expulsion. And look at even the language, that she's free to appeal. I think they're just doing the right thing. Maybe because now Big Brother is watching, maybe the US will take an interest in this, and then maybe the UN will take an interest in this. I'm just giving an example. And then people, before you know it, voila, they'll be shouting extreme measures. It's amounting to killing a fly with a sledgehammer. But to me, that is a very mild slap on the wrist. After the exposure, he should be prosecuted. The affected lecturer should seek redress in court, demand compensation. You understand? And then it also underscores the dangers university lecturers face in trying to impact knowledge, because they are not really protected from angry students, from cultists, and from all manner, even parents. We've had instances, what is happening here is very prevalent in secondary school, instances where teachers will threaten where parents will threaten teachers for failing their words in secondary school, or they're bound to bribe their way through to get excellent grades. Then going back to the original question, at the onset of this review, are we insane? Yes, I think, honestly, that's the thing.
Okay, let's go the other way, this time around.
Yeah.
The student-lecturer relationship. Sometimes, in universities, we see situations where these lecturers become a threat to the students on the other hand, particularly, female students and all of that. in that situation, what are we supposed to expect? Because most of these people don't have a place, to report cases like this or retaliate in whatever situation that comes up.
And let me just recall the sting, well, some people say investigative report by the BBC on,
Sex for Grace.
Precisely, documentary. Some say it wasn't an investigative report, it was actually a sting operation. You set people up. But you see, there being some daring female students who have, in a way, recorded the sexual advances of their lecturers and expose them. So that is one way to fight it. You understand? Because now it's a digital age. People, you have spy pens with cameras, even reading glasses now. So I'm just recommending one way. But yes, this has been in existence from time immemorial. Lecturers, which is very reprehensible, very disgusting. Even back in the day, even in my time, before my time even, it has been a common practice, especially young lecturers, even those in their middle age, they've engaged in that. But it's only coming to the fore now because we are living in a digital age. Nothing is hidden. What you say now, back in the day we used to say, if you don't want it in the print tomorrow, don't do it today. Now, if you don't want it instantly reported on social media platforms, don't even contemplate doing that. Yeah, don't ever think of doing that. So really, but there are instances also the reverse is the case. There have been instances where we have, unfortunately and regrettably, for cultural reasons, women are seen as the custodian of morality. They're supposed to be morally superior to men. But there are instances where also female lecturers, they pose a threat to male students right here in our climb, making advances turned down. Some of them even married, for Christ's sake. I'm just giving an example. So some of us brought in the old school ways, that is it's a no-no. It's very doubly reprehensible. It's even unthinkable, but it's happening. Then again, going back to, are we really saying what happened to us? All of us. Here, north, south, west, east. What happened to us? You see, when you impart knowledge, the teacher is, if you like, an embodiment of all that is virtuous, all that is upright. It's even unthinkable that you make any kind of advances.
Now, we also have another interesting story now, talking about, how important the educational institution is. One wonders whether we are really placing that relevance on it. When you look at stories like this, that says ASU is threatening, to embark on another strike, because government has now failed, to implement the agreement and all of that. And the Minister of Labour, Chris Ngige, is also saying that NASU has rejected the sharing formula, initially proposed, and which is why they are not able to. Is that a justifiable ground?
Well, you see, let me again use this. In saner climes, education is perhaps next to defense. It's priority. It's top notch. It's there. Fund education. If you want to destroy a society, destroy education. Countries that have advanced at the turn, in the early 1970s, Nigeria, along with the Asian tigers, was classified among the newly influential states. I'm going back to history to come to this, past now, where education now has taken backbench. And over the years, managers of our education, when I say managers, government especially government-funded universities, which should have been, like I said, really, the funding should be, no boundaries, literally, because institutions, educational institutions, post-secondary, tertiary institutions, they're there, titles of learning, research, molding character, grooming future leaders. During the regional government, ABU, for example, in the north, in the west there was University of Ife, now named Obafemi. In the east there was University of Nsukka. Some of the graduates that ABU turned out to be leading scholars, not just in Nigeria, in the whole of the continent and even in the world. One of the teachers who taught in ABU only recently won a Nobel Prize for literature. So the point is, yes, I think the government over the years has neglected tertiary institutions, leading to our story past now. And that's why we've given rise to all manner of maladies bedeviling our varsities, from the students to instructional materials to research materials, and also to lecturers who literally have to do magic. For example, you have lecture theaters that are overpopulated, meant for maybe 40, 50 students. You have over 200 students. Some of them could not have furniture to sit on. So, also going back to strike, and you see, because government-funded universities in other countries, they are the preferred destination. Rarely people go to private universities. Even in countries that have, if you go to Malaysia, the universities of choice are government-funded universities for citizens of the country. Private universities, just like back in the day, in my time, nobody wants to go to private secondary school, at least up north, because they are not virtually non-existent. In the 70s and the 80s, and up to the mid-90s, if you go to private secondary school, unless missionary secondary schools. In Kano and in Kaduna, you have missionary secondary school. They have withered the test of time. They will remain. But with the underfunding of public universities and with the rise, some people say people in government actually help in the decapitation of public universities so that they will have their own private universities. And look at them. Among recent listing by the NUC, the top 10 universities in the country, none included a private university, notwithstanding the stupendous charges they make. None. Even if you go to law school, some of the guys who made first class, they're not from public schools. I mean, they're not from private schools. What does that tell you? That teaching in public schools, universities, is still top notch, top of the shelf. But this lingering crisis, and then the insistence of ASU, on the other hand, to be away, for example, IPPIS, which has been a major bone of contention. And the government insisting that we find instances where professors are teaching so many places, earning multiple salaries. But then really, if you look at the
I mean, what I wanted to say is that, sometimes if you look at it, the take home of these lecturers,
yes,
if they don't, engage in getting multiple pays,
yes,
in different locations, is it even something that can actually take them home?
Yes, this is very important because when you choose to teach scholarship, you just want to, you're not there to make, you are there to groom, to impress on fresh minds. That's the pay you want. But then you also need to have survival wage. And they're not getting that. So you expect, unless you gotten to the state that you authored so many books, you get a royalty, you're comfortable, you can't even do research. And that's why we have so many professors in our universities. But they can't do research. That's why you go across the continent, go to other parts of the world. University professors, they're engaged in research, and then they get paid. But here, we have too many PhDs doing actually very little. I've had instances where I have served along as other PhD holders, professors, as resource persons in workshops. And some of the things they're saying, well, I don't have a PhD, you understand? But sometimes I marvel at what they're saying, what they're turning out. So, not having survival wage is negating the idea of scholarship. Because if you look at lecturers, compared to what lecturers are earning and what our members of the legislators are earning, it's in no way comparison. Gap. And then people say all the time that, look, we are desirous of developing. And then you're underfunding universities, you're overpaying legislation, and we shout about high cost of governance. We have a bicameral legislature. And then look at like this comparison. In no way you have a councillor earning twice the salary of a professor. Is there in the public domain? Or a local government chairman. So really, there must be a middle ground. I'm not the best to recommend what should be done, but first, look at the demands of us. In fact, salary is the least of them. They're asking for better
working condition.
Exactly, better working condition.
Right.
They're asking for greater funding for research, but then also in doing the research, they divide research grants. Is there? We're saying you've been given grant, but then if they got foreign grant, they don't joke with that because you have to account for it. You've gotten foreign grant, UNESCO grant, for example, to do research on infant mortality, and then you think you will just go on lesser Hajj, if you understand, and then that's the end of it. No, you have to account for it. So, but we have instances where abuses have been done to research grants, especially indigenous research grants. So there should be a middle ground. Yes, equip the university, better working environment, then salary, we can talk about salary.
Okay, now let's go on a quick break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some more stories.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
that, Doctor?
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. Now, let's take a look at another story, that has been making rounds in almost all the newspapers nationwide. It's about the Lagos and SARS report. Now, the federal government has listed loopholes, but the UN and the US are demanding that sanction, must be implemented. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think the judicial report, which is leaked anyway, is not yet official because the governor of the state said he has not read it. But even the idea of leaking the report is to pressure the government, the center, to do what is right, recommendation of the panel report. One of which, among the recommendation, is to penalize most of the actors involved, the police and the army. And of course, naturally, you expect the federal government to fault it. The Chief of Defense Staff has faulted that. Defending the army, that is a very professional army, still maintaining that there was actually no massacre. Now, from the judicial report, you could say that, there was some sort of killing. At least 9 people were listed to either have been killed, deceased, or missing.
48.
48? Okay, 48.
Yes, then 11 dead.
Died.
Oh, 11 deaths.
Yes.
Okay, I must have read the wrong.
Then the rest of them either
48.
missing
Injuries.
or
Okay,
injured.
48 deaths.
No, 11 dead.
11 deaths.
Then the rest either missing or injured.
Okay. Now, among the dead, reportedly, is someone who is still alive. So that those who are sympathetic to the government, they are picking that as a loophole, that actually the report itself is subjective. But my own take is that there was finally, because of the report, I was one of those who was especially against the backdrop of the CNN report, which did not prove anything at the time, was skeptical of the quote-unquote the Massacre Act. Massacre is a very strong worded, it's a very strong word. But now with the judicial report, which has the same powers of a court, then you can say almost the same powers, I think, with the court. You can say, yes, there was a killing, because it's really very difficult to invite the army and you expect there was shooting and there was no death. But if you can see from the account of, one of the celebrities at the time, DJ Switch, and then the reportage by the media, especially indigenous media, and then foreign media, and then the vigilance of other Nigerians, not other who wanted the truth. The report then, before this final judicial report, a lot of people took it with a pinch of salt. But now finally, this perhaps will rest the controversy. There was the army involvement, there was shooting, and there was death. And the federal government should stop playing ostrich as far as this is concerned. And I will also lend my voice to the idea of doing, executing the recommendations of the judicial panel to serve as a deterrence, because stuff like this are likely to happen again and again. If it's not answers today, it will be end something today. And then every now and again there is civil arrest, you invite the army. What do you expect? The army is not trained to engage citizens in any civil discourse. You understand? Unlike the police, for example. The army is trained to see everybody as an enemy, and you don't invite the army to essentially deal with civil unrest. In the United States, the Constitution of the America forbids the deployment of the army on the shores of the United States. And that's why they say, look, if in the event we have an uprising that is far too strong for the police to contain, then you deploy the National Guard. And we've seen that happen when there was a threat after the ouster of Trump, when the American Congress was assaulted by sympathizers of Trump. The National Guard was deployed. Numbering, staggering over 20,000 was deployed to protect the Congress, the U.S. Capitol Hill. Now, but here we have, the police clearly is not equipped, given our new challenges, new realities. The police is overwhelmed, is stretched thin, and also under-equipped, underfunded, and clearly not motivated enough.
You know, some of the issues raised in that report is that the deployment of, just like you said, the deployment of troops, in that Lekki toll gate was unwarranted, according to the report. And that, for what many people who were watching saw on TV, because like certain channels, even aired it live and everything. And at least a majority of people believe that it was a peaceful gathering, and that you could see people who were singing the national anthem, carrying the national flags, with the thinking that, chanting the national anthem is enough, to deter anyone who may want to harm, a gathering like that, but we still saw that shooting. I mean, it is now admitted that that shooting took place and all of that. What is Nigeria standing to risk, in this kind of event?
Well, a lot. First one of which is capital. A lot of people will be apprehensive in investing in Nigeria. All the time. Although recently the president was in France, he was in South Africa, after the climate change summit in Glasgow. And in France, especially talking about investment in Nigeria, the French could come invest in Nigeria. Well, they have substantial investment in Nigeria. But when the tragedy of third world countries is that you could be untwisted. That could be used to to bring you down on your knees, literally. Why? Because at a time like this, when Nigeria needs all it could get from the international community, then you have reports like that. In advanced democracies, advanced countries, you can't even think of not taking on account of human rights abuses. We've seen instances where the government of Russia had deployed maximum force to deal with either internal dissent. We've seen how it handled the Chechenian rebels. We've seen how, but the international community looked the other way around. No sanction was meted to, and besides, Russia has gas, was doing business. Nobody thought of that. We risk sanction. Already, the United States has been banding that those who are involved in electoral malpractices, either anywhere, they risk the sanction of first visa ban. I don't know, for whatever reason, the Nigerian elite that could be involved in electoral malpractice think that if it does not go to the United States, or if they don't go to the United States, they're missing heaven. There is that idea. One of the sanctions here. Then there will be military sanctions, no training for our armed forces, no sale of arms. At a time we are dealing with insurrection, insurgency, banditry. So these are all possibilities.
So what about the implication on this on Nigerians in terms of, we are already struggling with issue of trust between Nigerians and, and their government. So what's the impact of this, on regaining confidence of, the public on what government is doing?
Governments anywhere in the world, they are not trusted. very. So in Africa and in Nigeria especially, and especially this government, over time it has exhausted its large amount of goodwill and trust. One of the selling points of the incumbent president is his trustworthiness. Till this moment, there are people who think his integrity has remained cast iron, that his moral credentials are beyond reproach. But unfortunately, people don't think of his lieutenants as so. There are some ministers, people, when you mention them, they say, no, they are the very personification of distrust and lacking integrity, that their word is not their bond. Now, yes, with this development now, the distrust between government and the people would further widen. There will be lots of suspicion. All along, the government has not been level with the citizens. There are instances the government has said, look, we're not going to do, let me give you instances where the government has abused the trust. And the moment there is that disconnect, that contract between the government and the citizen is being undermined, then trust, and you need the trust of the people to do some of the things. Instances of energy costs. Government in the past has said, look, we're not going to review upwards prices of energy. Electricity, what is happening now? Cooking gas has gone beyond petrol, fuel. You know, even now in Abuja, until yesterday, there be long queues in anticipation of hike in fuel price, which is imminent anyway. So citizens should be very vigilant. So distrust, like I said, from for years, but with this government it has heightened. Why? Because we're in digital era, information age. Nothing is sacrosanct, nothing that cannot be violated. Memos, top secret memos, before you know it, somebody has screenshot it and then it goes viral. Right. And that doctored, they could be real, they could be forged. Nothing is impossible. So trust is certainly, and the government is not doing much. From where I'm seated, I don't see the government doing that much to gain the trust of the people. The government, regrettably, well, some people will say is doing its utmost best given the circumstances, but there is so much distrust between the media and the government. The government is not carrying the media along.
Right.
You understand? In other setting is agenda, you know. Under military rule, I've known the number of times the military high command, military rulers at the time, engaged media quietly to look, this is our position, even under Obasanjo. But really, the president, how many times has the president spoken to the people? For the past 7 years, he's only had one single media chat. And then his lieutenants, the ministers, how often do they engage citizens to explain something? So distrust naturally would, and then elections is around the corner. There are people sitting to unseat the president, his final term. And then there are also people who are trying to, as much as possible, to throw into the works, a spanner into the works. For example, there's this agitation and the president has said over and over that time he would leave at the end of his 2 term. But there are some people who are still cynical about that.
Right.
You understand? I'm just giving you. That's why the government is distrust. People are not really, and with this NSAS report, judicial report, whatever trust conscience left may have been destroyed.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for having
this discussion. Hopefully we'll have you again another time. All right. Now we've been speaking with Ali M. Ali. He is the editor-in-chief, People's Daily, in the studio, giving us perspectives on the stories that made the headlines. At this point, we'll go on a short break. And then when we come back, we'll be speaking with pharmacist Chukwuemeka Oko, who will be talking to us about the Antibiotics Week, which is this week, talking about how Nigerians even self-medicate sometimes. We may be chipping in that as well in the course of our discussion. Let's take this break. Please stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, today is World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, Ayuba, and we have Dr. Chukwuemeka, is he a doctor? Pharmacist Chukwuemeka in the studio to discuss, you know, the Antimicrobial Awareness Week. So could you walk us through what this week is all about?
Okay, thank you very much. Antimicrobial Awareness Week is a week set aside to celebrate antibiotics and how much good they have done to the world. okay, because before the era of antibiotics, people die of infections as simple as an infection on this chair or on a hard surface. Back then, such infections, we call them germs, they could kill. But when penicillins came in, that was about the first antibiotic that was discovered. When those ones came in, gradually they started treating some of those infections, and other antibiotics, antimicrobial agents came in from that penicillins. They kept growing till we're able to treat almost any infection that is available in the medical space today. So this week is a week set aside by the United Nations and the World Health Organization to celebrate how much contribution antibiotics has done to the world, and to also create awareness that antimicrobial resistance, which is a thing now, a very serious one, is something we should really give some thought to and be deliberate about trying to stop it. Because what antimicrobial resistance does is it makes the antibiotics we take, it makes them no longer work. Okay, and then if it continues, if the trend continues, it's going to get to a time where we would go back to the era where we don't have antibiotics to take care of infections that are abound in the environment. And with that, you see people begin to die of common illnesses that ordinarily could have been treated. So this week is a week set aside to celebrate what antimicrobial agents have done for us, and also to create awareness that there is something called antimicrobial resistance, and it's something we should really spend some time talking about and trying to find a way around it. Yeah.
So in your assessment, how much of information do we have, about antibiotics in this part of the world, Nigeria, and people? How much of information do we have, about, their impact, on our health and all of that?
Well, I think we have quite a lot of information because I see people when they are sick. They go to their doctors, they go for assessment, diagnosis, and then treatment, and they come around with their prescriptions, and they are able to, engage you on antibiotics, what they do, okay, and some of the other things they need it for. So we do have quite a lot of information. However, I think that we also need to be a lot more informed on how to use these antibiotics rationally. Okay, we have quite a lot of information, especially for the antibacterial agents, but we do need more information on how to use them rationally to avoid abusing them. Okay, so we can curb the trend of antimicrobial resistance in its tracks. Yeah.
Okay, now talking about resistance, over time, when we take a particular kind of antibiotic, some doctors, some pharmacists say that you develop resistance over time. What could be responsible for that?
Okay, there are lots of things that could be responsible, but they all border around inadequate dosing. I'd like to term it as inadequate or inappropriate dosing. Inappropriate dosing in the sense that if you overdose it, over time it could cause resistance. If you underdose it and you do it over time, it could also cause resistance. Okay, so these are the key causes. Okay, so it borders around overdosing or underdosing it, not taking the appropriate dose. Then when you take it for too long, say the recommendation is that you're supposed to take it for maybe 7 days from your doctor, and then maybe out of your own volition you feel, okay, taking it 14 days would give me better results, and you go ahead, take it that long, it could also cause resistance when it's done repeatedly. So the key cause is the dosing, inappropriate dosing. And again, when you misuse it, for instance, if you are treating, say, a respiratory tract infection of the throat, the nose, or the ear, and then you take an antibiotic that is not meant for that indication, okay, maybe due to a prescription mistake or something of that nature, it could also lead
self-medication.
Or maybe self-medication, thank you. Or maybe self-medication,
because,
yes.
Sometimes people feel like, okay, I think this is what's wrong with me. Let me take this.
Exactly.
That in itself, how does that contribute?
It contributes a lot, okay, in that antibiotics or antimicrobial agents, they are meant, we call them indications, okay? There are antibiotics for different indications. If someone is dealing with a urinary tract infection, okay, male or female, there are antibiotics that their main focus is that urinary tract infection. Okay, if someone is dealing with something that is respiratory, there are antibiotics that focus particularly on that indication. Okay, so when maybe say, because what I see mostly in practice is somebody will just walk into the pharmacy and say, give me Ampiclos. Okay, and it's my job to ask you, why do you want to take Ampiclos? Okay, and then when you begin to inquire, you find out that sometimes my friend said he has used this and it worked for him. Okay, so give me. Okay, and you do not know that there are a whole lot of dynamics behind that medication. So when I inquire, I get to recommend something that is best, or most times I tell them to go to their doctor first, because normally you're not supposed to take an antibiotic without a test and all of that. Okay, so that self-medication contributes a lot in that it could lead to misuse, it could lead to abuse, it could lead to underdosing, it could lead to overdosing, it could lead to using the antibiotic for a period of time that you are not supposed to use it for.
Okay.
How dangerous is that? You know, because people seem to, you know, take this really for granted. They feel like, well, I can just do this thing. And so how does it affect even in terms of treatment when, you know, you now eventually, you know, after you've done all that you feel to do, it hasn't given you any results and you decided, okay, let me just go to the hospital. And how complicated does it make the treatment or whatever it is?
Okay, this is the thing. Let me just put it in very plain terms. Before the era of antibiotics, people die of infections because they could not get treatment. That is how dangerous it is. If we continue to do it that way, it would get to a time where pharmaceutical companies are no longer producing antibiotics because they don't see the need to. Why should I spend billions on drug discovery for a medication that maybe use it 10 years? It will no longer work. Doctors will no longer prescribe it because it's not working. Okay, so why should I spend billions making such drugs when 10 years down the line, it's out of form? Okay, so what that will cause is that it would get to a time pharmaceutical companies are no longer producing. The ones we have, they are no longer working. So there will be no antibiotics again to take care of these infections. So when it gets to that time, we will just have to go back to that area where people die for common infections that ordinarily we could have treated with this antibiotic. So that's how dangerous it is.
Okay, you know.
What about on the individual?
On the individual level, it could cause treatment failure. Okay, you treat, I've seen people take antibiotics for 10, 14, like that and like that, and they still come back to tell you that it did not work.
Right.
It did not work. Okay, then when I begin to inquire, how did you take these antibiotics? Why did you take it? Was there a prescription? Did you see a doctor before taking it? Okay, and the answers you get will just tell you this person did not take it right, did not do the right thing. Okay, so it could result to treatment failure. And in such cases, say people like that are admitted to a hospital, it could also place financial burden on them because there's treatment failure from something you spent money taking already, and then you're in the hospital to start another whole regimen of antibiotics, of which you're going to pay for. And in another light, when you take medications like that for too long, it could also lead to organ damage. The liver, the kidney, because these things we are taking in, the body is going to have to deal with it. The liver is going to have to break it down. So when it's done its job, the liver is going to have to break it down so it will get out of the system. Okay, so when you just would take them carelessly, it could just lead to that treatment failure, financial burden on the patient, and in very extreme cases, okay, organ damage.
Okay, you know, there's this particular issue I've been trying to find out. Sometimes when you go to the pharmacy or to the hospital, when they recommend drugs, they sometimes tell you you're supposed to take this for so hours or for so times. And then most of the time, I'm also guilty of that. So when they tell me take it at this time, I might not be able to take it at that time. Does this have any effect on the way the antibiotics works in your body subsequently?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does because the quantity of antibiotics in your blood, because when you take it, your body breaks it down, it gets into the bloodstream. That's when it starts working. Okay, so there has to be a particular concentration, a particular quantity in your blood for it to work effectively. That's why you're told to take it at this time, because it is at those specific times that you're going to get the best concentration, the best quantity in your blood to achieve maximum result. Okay. So if you do not take it at the stated times, okay, you might have a situation where you don't have enough of it in your blood, okay, to do the job, and then when you finally get to take it, it could result to, okay, you have too much of it now in your blood, such that if done over time, it could cause a problem. Yeah, so not taking it at the specified times could also be problematic, yes.
Okay, so there's another temptation here. You find that there are times when a drug has been prescribed, yes,
okay,
and then they say, okay, take 2 of this, take 1 of this. And then maybe in your head, you feel, why take 1? Just 1? And then you take the 1, and then you feel like, it's not working, let me add more. You know? So,
well, I see that.
How does one resist, these temptations?
Taking
because,
1 more.
Because you are feeling like it's not working. Let me just add more.
I see that a lot, and I think the only thing to do here, or the best way to go about it, we just have to, develop this trust for our professionals. That's just about the only way to go about it, because I cannot be in your house or be with you at every point in time to tell you, okay, you must take it at this time. Okay, right. So the best way to go about it is just to develop trust for our professionals and to understand that I told you this is my job. I've done it since I finished school. Okay, and I'm telling you this is the best way to go about it, right, because I know that is the best way to go about it. Okay, so it's best we just do it that way, because drugs are not magic. Antibiotics or whatever medication you're going to take, they are not magic. They're expected to take time to work. Okay, some would help give you immediate relief. For example, if you're having malaria and there's the fever that comes with malaria and the headache and all of that, okay, and most times you're given an anti-malaria prescription and then paracetamol. All right, the job of the paracetamol is to help you get relief from the fever within, say, 15 minutes. Okay, then the anti-malaria takes a longer time to work. So your professionals, they understand these things, so that's why they're adding something that would help you immediately. But in cases where there is no such adjunct, I think we have to develop trust for our professionals, okay, so that we get the best result from the medications we take. That's about the only way to go about it.
Okay, let's talk about mixing, orthodox and traditional medicine. Sometimes, like I have a baby, sometimes my mom will say, and give him this agbo, and then there's the one from the doctor. And then it doesn't feel right, to mix up, orthodox and the other traditional medicine. Does it have a repercussion in our bodies?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because this is the thing. Those orthodox medicines, I am a traditionalist. I believe in Nigeria. I believe in Africa. I believe that
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I believe that someday we're going to, lead the world. Okay, but till we get to that point where we're able to refine our medicines properly, we're able to test our traditional medicines, our herbal medicines, to ensure that the toxic, because some of those herbs, they have toxic components. They have components that when you take them, they disturb the liver, some disturb the kidney, some can just cause things that you cannot explain. Okay, and then a lot of our facilities are present. We're still working on it. There's the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development here. We're still working on it. But we're trying to get to a stage where before you see any herbal medications out there, we've gone through the necessary tests, the toxic elements have been removed to ensure that it's safe. Okay, but until then, it's best you just do your orthodox medicines. There are herbal medicines in the market that they've been tested, they've been standardized, and you can take those ones. Okay, so you can still take them, okay, if it's prescribed by your doctor. But it's always advised to not mix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us 1 or 2 names of some of the herbal ones that are in the market?
Some of the herbal ones, for example, there is this ginkgo biloba. It is gotten from a herbal. I've forgotten there's ginkgo biloba. There's even the ginger,
Okay, the ginger.
Yes, there's the ginger. There are ginger supplements. They've been pressed from raw ginger and formulated into tablets, some soft gels, so people can take them. Okay, so there are others in that line. Those ones have been tested, they've been standardized. Okay, so if you have a prescription from your doctor, you can go ahead and take them. But if there would be a need to mix medicines, your doctor or your pharmacist will tell you that you can go ahead and mix these ones. Because there's another thing, there's something that interaction is another thing we see in the medical field.
Right.
Okay, if you take two medicines and they are not supposed to go together, they can cause an interaction that could be harmful to the body. Okay, so that's why you always advise, do not mix. Do not mix.
All right, so at what point will we say that we are abusing drugs? Because, say for instance, I'm feeling a slight headache and I decided, okay, let me get a Panadol. Is that drug abuse?
Technically it is. Yeah, it is. Okay, if you just go to maybe a roadside store and give me paracetamol and they give you paracetamol, okay, and you go your way, that could be termed as drug abuse, okay, because you did not seek the advice of a professional before taking it.
Oh.
So
because most times,
so for everything that you feel in your body,
We need to go to the hospital.
it's
you have
best.
to call a doctor or you visit a doctor.
It's best.
And all of that.
That's the best option. The reason is sometimes, or most times actually, the paracetamol you're going to get over the counter to take might not be good for you. The doctor has your file in the hospital, he has your history, your pharmacist also has your history, okay? And with your history, we can tell which drug will be good for your body and which will not be.
Okay.
So if you go over the counter and you just get a medication out of your own volition and you take it, you might be endangering yourself because from your history, except your doctor sits you down and explains everything in detail to you, you might not understand, the full implications of those files they keep in the hospital that contains your history.
Okay, so can we attribute over-the-counter medication to self-medication? Are they the same thing?
If you get it without the advice of a professional, you can call it self-medication, yes.
Oh. Okay.
All right, now looking at Nigeria as a country and all of that in terms of seeking medical attention and seeking medical advice, in your assessment, what's the ratio like? How do we do it? I mean, especially if you put it against the backdrop of the fact that we are having, I would say, deficiency of medical doctors, in Nigeria. How do you assess that?
Okay, I know we do have a problem in that area, okay, because we do not have enough doctors. Though I think the World Health Organization, they said that the ratio is supposed to be, I think, 1:600 or thereabout. But in Nigeria, I think we have up to 1:6,000 or even more. Okay, the same thing applies to pharmacists and other professionals in the health space. So we do not have enough. Okay, and what we are trying to do is to ensure that these professionals they work hand in hand, collaboratively, to ensure that we get the best, even while there's the problem of understaffing. Okay, so what we do now, or what is being done, the government is currently doing, is they are trying to establish primary healthcare facilities across Nigeria. Okay, what those primary healthcare facilities will do is to train community health workers and even nurses to take care of basic issues. So if you have something like a cough of a day, maybe due to cold, or headache due to stress, you don't have to go to National Hospital to see a doctor. You can just walk into the primary healthcare facility close by, okay, to get that basic treatment. Then if there is the need to move upward, those professionals, they're also trained to refer you appropriately.
Okay.
And that's why there are lots of community pharmacies springing up now, okay, because what we want to do, if you have anything that is basic, those things that can be dealt with at the primary level, you don't have to even call a doctor per se, or go to a tertiary facility, something like National Hospital or the FMC in Jabi. These are more or less secondary and tertiary facilities, so you don't have to go there. You could just walk into your primary healthcare facilities around your vicinity, okay, and then see professionals there. Those things that are basic, after the necessary test here and there, they will deal with it. Okay, if there is the need to now refer you, they would refer you. What that does now is to help reduce the burden that healthcare professionals are having to deal with.
Okay. Now, is the primary health facility meant to just take care of basic health needs? Because you find out that sometimes in remote villages where there's no access, to tertiary or primary healthcare, tertiary or secondary healthcare facilities. For instance, women that give birth, when emergencies, come up, you find out that most of these facilities do not have the equipment required, to respond to emergencies. For instance, emergency cesarean section and all of that. So I would like to know, is it that the primary healthcare is just meant to take care of basic, small health needs of the people?
Okay, the training, because these things are by training, you cannot do what you're not trained to do, because if you try to do that, you're just going to cause more harm. Okay, so the training is such that they are trained to deal with basic issues, basic health issues only. So if there is the need, that's why that's the place of referral. If there's the need, they are obligated by law and by their training to refer immediately.
All right, now talk to us about how much we are doing in terms of development of drugs in Nigeria locally. Of recent, the whole conversation about COVID-19 exposed everyone, not just the Nigeria, but every country, to the need to be self-sufficient when it comes to certain things, especially in the health sector and all of that. How much are we doing, and what kind of improvements do we need to do to meet our own needs?
Okay, I think we are beginning to wake up to that call, because like you said, the COVID era since 2019 or 20 has really opened our eyes to a lot of things. Okay, the need to really be self-sufficient. So we are beginning to wake up to that call. For example, the Central Bank of Nigeria, there is a fund that is currently in place that allows healthcare professionals to assess monies they need for whatever operation, so long you can prove that this is what I need this money for. Okay, so long you can get your papers and everything in place. CBN is currently giving grants to pharmacists, doctors, nurses. If you're a healthcare professional, you follow the right channel, you get this grant to ensure that you get whatever you need and get it going. So I believe that is a step in the right direction, because young pharmacists, even the older ones, we are leveraging that grant, okay, to set up local manufacturing facilities, even if it's for excipients only, okay, because in drugs there are two components. You have the main drug and you have the excipients. So we are leveraging that facility and some of the other facilities that are available to ensure that we kickstart our own local manufacturing industries for both the excipients and the drugs alike, so that over time we're able to get sufficient in our own production capacity. We also have the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development in Edu here. Okay, those guys are doing their best. Okay. Recently, they came up with a pilot production plan. It has been there, okay, but recently they started making drugs. Even not too long ago, the Niprisan, you may have or you may not have heard of Niprisan. Niprisan is a medication that was formulated from the ground up, from the discovery stage, the extraction of the ingredient, everything up to the pilot's manufacturing stage. It was made, packaged, and done in Niprid. So I believe that once these institutions, agencies like this, corporate bodies and individuals are encouraged, okay, to go into these things, and our government, get the infrastructures in place, because that is also important. That is also important. We don't want a situation where we set up local industries and the competition from importers would not allow them thrive because of the price differences. So I think it's also important that apart from the grants, our government also get into getting infrastructure in place so that the local facilities will thrive. So I believe we've started, we're going somewhere, and in time we would be locally sufficient.
Okay, before we wrap up now, talking about differences in price, why are antibiotics expensive?
It's not all antibiotics that are expensive. Start with, there are those that are expensive because of the ingredient they contain, and also because of the efforts mostly it took to manufacture them. Okay, because when we talk about drug development, it's not just going to an industry, compounding these things and then sending them out. Okay, drug development, you have to start from maybe a herb. Okay, you get the herb and you start the process of extraction. From extraction, you have to now get out the content that you need. Okay, sometimes that could mean sieving through thousands and thousands of molecules in a herb. Okay, so when you do all of that, you refine, you standardize, you now get through regulatory approval. After regulatory approval, that is only when you can start large-scale manufacturing, because you don't want to manufacture something in a large scale and the regulators, they'll tell you, we don't know what this is. That would be a heavy loss. So you have to go through all of that process, do your large-scale manufacturing. You have to now go through the customs and the logistics and all of that before it gets to the market. So these are some of the things that make the antibiotics expensive, but I can tell you that it's not all of them that are. It's not. There are those that are quite expensive because of what they do, and there are those that are also affordable for everyone.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We have to end the discussion here. It's been quite interesting having this time with you. Thank you for obliging, and we hope to meet you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just have a seat. Have a seat. Yes, we've been speaking with Chukwuemeka Oko. He's a pharmacist and giving us perspectives on the week on antibiotics.
I've learned quite a lot, actually.
Awareness. Yes, quite a lot. And I believe so it is for our viewers as well. Now, let's go on a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at some other issues on the program this morning. Please stay with us.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. It's been quite interesting so far. Now, let's take a look at yet another story. While the world is talking about climate change and how to, protect the environment and the world, from what do you call, the global warming and all of that, we are seeing, certain trends in Nigeria that doesn't go well at all. With the recent increase in the price of gas, a lot is really changing and a lot is at stake. We are seeing, like from the report from Daily Trust this morning, trees are falling, and that's dangerous for us.
That's dangerous, to the planet.
Yes, and that's because people are no longer able to afford, cooking gas and kerosene. I mean, kerosene for a liter goes for more than 500 naira now.
It's expensive.
Quite expensive.
Very expensive.
Cooking alternatives for people, it's the opportunities are slimming down and all of that. So let's take a look at this report, and then when we come back, we would see some of the perspectives on this.
Until recently, cooking gas used to be the cheapest source of energy for many households and small businesses, especially those who operate restaurants.
How can you sell and bring out of the money of that gas? There is no gain in the business again. They are not gaining it at all. And we don't even know whether the gas will still increase again. I used to fill this thing 10.5 kg. And now, I don't even have money to fill even 3 kg. Once, if I fill maybe 2 kg, if I'm lucky, I will go and fill 2 kg. By the time I'm done with 2 kg, and then run again and go back because the filling station is just close by me. So I cannot afford money to fill the 10.5 again.
I remember just 2 days ago, I went to the gas station to get some, gas. I think 12.5 kg, I was told 9,200. I think the last time I bought it was about 7,200, and now I'm told 9,200. You can imagine the huge gap. So it's really, really not encouraging, and it's not funny. It is really telling on people. That means if we can't get firewood, we can't get charcoal. Kerosene is even something else. Now gas now is something that somebody cannot even afford to buy so that you can cook and eat.
The State Interim Secretary of the Kaduna State Liquefied Petroleum Gas Plant Owners Association, Abdulrazak Yekini, says, apart from high demand of gas, other factors are responsible for persistent rise in the price of the commodity.
I can attribute the persistent price in the increase of LPG to 2 or 3 factors. One, basically our over-reliance on imported LPG, and the increase in the rate of dollar has attributed to the increase or persistent increase in the price of LPG. And 2, before now, LPG product was not included in the federal government product that were VATed. But now there's 7.5% VAT on LPG. This has also caused the increase in LPG. And we can also say that another factor that led to the increase or persistent increase in price is the demand. That is, there's a large demand now for LPG.
The residents also called on government to bring succor to the masses by lowering the price of cooking gas.
The government should just try as much as possible to do something about it and let the common man be able to go to the filling station, buy gas, and be able to cook something for him and his family to eat.
So we are calling on the government because there is no charcoal. There is no, some of us can go for the charcoal. If you say the electricity, there's high rates on the electricity. They are overbilling or such like this, a small container. They have given me a bill of 19,000.
For now, many have resorted to using charcoal in the hope that the price of gas will fall soon.
Ayuba, from her conversations, she was mentioning that there's no charcoal, there's high cost, of gas. power supply is not consistent.
Exactly.
You know, there's just so much happening at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at the electricity tariff, for those who may resort to hot plates, you know, using hot plates and
Hot
all of
plates
that, that's also another problem.
Yes,
because
yes.
the more of that you use, the higher you pay for power and electricity. And now the gas, which is an alternative as well, is also not in supply. And you also find that even the charcoal is no longer
not available.
So what are we expecting? People will go back to the firewoods, you know, and I hope that something is done really fast about this. The entrepreneurs in that business, say stakeholders in that business, have, you know, fingered the issues of excise duty, tariffs, you know, government tariffs on the importation of these gas, and all of that as part of the reason why we are seeing this surge, and that there is more consumption, there is more demand now for, you know, gas itself in Nigeria. So those are the issues, factors that are considered as, you know, responsible for that. But we need to be able to produce, you know, and meet our own local demands. That's very important for a country,
you know, that
is endowed like ours.
You know, at the filling station where they refill gas, 12.5 kg is about 9,200. But when you go to the black marketers who sell these gas, it's almost 10,000 naira.
Very sad that this is something that was selling for, you know, around maybe 4,000.
4,000.
4,000, 3,000 before now, and this is where we are. So it's really alarming that something needs to be done about that. Now, talking about something, you know, being done again, yesterday we had another tragic incident that happened in Lagos. This time around, you know, it was a gas explosion. So I mean, after all, it's something we cannot do without. You know, while we use it to cook, on the other hand, you know, it could also be very dangerous, you know, for us. And yes, it was tragic yesterday. About 5 people were said to have died
yes.
From that incident,
including
in Lagos.
a 10-year-old.
Including a 10-year-old. We have a report, you know, from Lagos yesterday on that. Take a look at it.
The explosion, according to Ibrahim Fariloyi, Coordinator National Emergency Management Agency, Southwest Zone, is unfortunate and avoidable as it is not the first in Lagos, promising that the government will do everything possible to avert future occurrences.
We received the distress alerts at about 8 o'clock. While we got to the site, the fire was still on. We tried to mobilize more resources. We recovered one boy, a teenager about 10 years old. We recovered him alive, and on the process of being rescued to the hospital, he died before getting to the hospital. 4 adults were recovered dead. Out of them, a woman who is said to be frying some wider bones or something related to that. Why one Sadiq was trying to adjust and work on one of the cylinder. So 5 adults, 4 dead adults, 1 teenager died in the incident. The DPR, that's former Department of Petroleum Resources, they are here with us because if you remember from early this year, we have we recorded this drastic reduction in explosives, especially gaseous and petrochemicals. With what is happening now these days, we are going to sit down again with state and federal agencies to re-strategize. I think there is a vacuum now. That vacuum, we now going to create it. We are going to bridge the vacuum to stop the occurrence in the state.
For Olajide Ogaba, Deputy Head, Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service, other sister rescue agencies deserve commendation for prompt response to the incidents.
Total of about 3 shores were noticed or counted as affected, and about 3 shanties and 6 shops were affected. Now we have total of 12 vehicles affected by this blast. That is the situation for now. And as you can see, we are at the scene of the emergency. You can see yourself that the situation is relatively calm now. It's under control.
Eyewitnesses who were at the scene of the accident bemoaned the explosion.
Actually, I was inside the bedroom when I heard the explosion. I was inside the bedroom taking my bath just to go to my work. And let's even say, because I always come here. I always come here to have to even play with the guy that is in, doing the upholstery here. So I just like, what happened? So as I was taking my bath, I just heard the explosion suddenly. So I just had to take my risk, just risk my own life first before even checking on other people. I even ran out with naked myself, but thank God I'm fine. Thank God I'm fine. But what's really pained me there is about the known people that are there, that is dead. Is it the one that is dead? Is it the one that has a body that is body wasted? But I just have to thank God.
The gas explosion, which occurred on Tuesday morning on Ojekunle Street in Ladipo area of Mushin in Lagos, is coming a few weeks after an explosion in Ikeja Computer Village Access. This frequent gas explosion in Lagos is becoming an issue that needs urgent consideration in the state. From Lagos, Eniola Mayowa for Trust TV.
You know, Lagos has been in the news, for very sad news lately.
Mm-hmm. Very, very sad incidents. I recall that I would say barely a week or maybe two, we had the Ikoyi building collapse, that claimed the life of so many people, and now this is coming also. And unfortunately, these are things that happen almost, every now and then. We see them happen. They are not new to us. They always happen. So, but what are the lessons that we are learning from these things?
Right.
And what do we need to do to, beg your pardon, forestall future occurrences of these sad incidents? Certainly, agencies of government, disaster management agencies must be, up and doing to make sure that all the precautions are taken. Not that when things happen and then we are always seen, responding to them, but rather be proactive, about these things.
Okay. According to reports, one of the reasons why this explosion happened was because somebody's mobile phone was closed. I think that was what aggravated, the explosion. So please, if we're going anywhere close to a gas cylinder or any gas tank or anything, we should always keep our mobile phones away.
Mm-hmm. Very, very important. I mean, we take this for granted. And sometimes we feel like, well, it doesn't matter, but it does actually. When you go to a filling station, you see the signs that tell you no smoking, no use of cell phones and all of that. Right. It's deliberate, it's intentional. Those things, they have impact. You do not want to endanger your life and endanger the lives of others as well. So it's very important that we take these precautions seriously, because of course there's always this very thin line between that which is a source of income, which we use for cooking, and something that could also lead to the death of many. So it's very, very important. Well, with that,
this have come to the end of the show
today. Yes, join us again tomorrow for another time on the program. Like I said, we do this every morning, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. For those who are watching the show for the first time, make it a date with us every other day as we do this program, just to keep you updated. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
And I am Zainab Bala. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Bye for now.